Congo gained its independence from Belgium in 1960 but was soon plunged into a 5-year-long war. The Congo Crisis saw Belgium back some breakaway states like Katanga in the south, and communist nations backed the Simba rebels. Famously, Che Guevara travelled to the Congo and unsuccessfully fought alongside Laurent Désiré Kabila. But it was Mobutu, backed by the Americans, who took power in 1965. He did initially improve the economy and stabilise the country, and tried to create a sense of nationalism by, amongst other things, hosting major sporting events, holding lavish ceremonies, and renaming the country Zaire. But elements of resistance remained despite his often brutal attempts to crush them. Congolese students abroad formed anti-Mobutu groups, and Kabila, for instance, established a small Marxist state in the mountainous borders of Burundi and Rwanda, which survived until the late 80s. Plus, the country was still divided among tribal lines. For instance, the Lunda people in the south fought against the government during the Shaba conflict in the 1970s. And all of this was made worse because Mobutu put people of his own tribe, the Ngandi, into positions of power. For instance, his personal bodyguards, the Owls, were all Ngandi. And the country was plunged into debt thanks to his economic mismanagement, corruption, and embezzlement. And when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the United States began to reduce their aid to Zaire, seeing no need to prop him up anymore. However, the cause of the war can be found in the east, where Tutsi immigrants from Rwanda caused ethnic tensions. Many had arrived before Congolese independence and fought both for and against Mobutu during the Congo Crisis, but they were soon joined by many more who fled Rwanda, first when the Hutus took power and then in the early 90s when the Hutus committed genocide. And the formation of the Rwandan Patriotic Front and the arrival of even more immigrants led to a well-armed fighting force within Zaire. And even more Tutsis fled to Zaire when the Burundian Civil War erupted, when the Burundian president Untitled was assassinated in late 1993. In Rwanda, the Tutsis under Kagame seized power in mid-1994, but this just encouraged hundreds of thousands of Hutus to flee to neighbouring countries, starting the Great Lakes refugee crisis. Many of these Hutus were well armed and began fighting with the Tutsis in refugee camps in Zaire. So Kagame and his ally Museveni of Uganda began sending aid to the Congolese Tutsis, hoping to start a rebellion against the Hutus. The Tutsis then, fearing persecution from the Zaire government, formed the AFDL. They were soon joined by Kabila, who, after years away, returned to Zaire to help lead the new group and encourage anti-Mobutu citizens to join. In 1996, the Tutsi militias in the AFDL finally engaged with Zairean soldiers, starting the First Congo War. Zaire had a poor infrastructure, and Mobutu's forces were poorly organised and had very little influence in the east, so the rebels were able to capture most of the border regions by the end of the year. They, however, halted their advance and destroyed refugee camps that they believed housed many of the Hutus who committed genocide in Rwanda. Mobutu, realising that his own army couldn't recapture the east, hired mercenaries, most of which were veterans from the Yugoslavian wars. Kagame was now worried about a potential counterattack, but fortunately for him, Angola entered the war against Mobutu. President José Eduardo dos Santos of Angola joined the war because he was fighting a civil war against UNITA, a political party which was in part funded by Mobutu. Emboldened, Kagame decided to help the rebels advance on Kinshasa in early 1997. One army marched north through Kisangani while another went south, taking Kundu by March. The rebels met very little resistance on their advance due to desertion and disorganisation within the opposition forces, but they still committed a great deal of atrocities. The international community tried to broker a peace, but this was largely ignored by the rebels. Plus, by this point, Mobutu had very little international support. By the end of April, Lubumbashi in Kagana had fallen to the rebels, and in early May, the Angolans joined the rebels on their push on the capital. So on the 16th of May, Mobutu fled just before Kabila's forces entered Kinshasa. Mobutu would die a couple months later in exile, while Kabila would try to unite the newly named Democratic Republic of Congo and repair the very divided and impoverished nation. But he was largely seen as a puppet of Rwanda and angered many ethnic groups by reducing their autonomy. And within a year, the well-armed population rose up against Kabila, and even more nations got involved in the more deadly Second Congo War.